Welcome to this session. Today, I'll be taking us on intellectual property workshop, like the gold mine in IP for creative. So what is intellectual property? As creative, what do you understand by intellectual property, and why is it important for you to protect your intellectual property as a creative? So let's look at what we have from here. From the diagram we have here, we have someone pointing at a board, and we have someone thinking about the gold mine in IP, and you have students just like we have ourselves here listening to the tutor, probably which is me. So creativity, if you agree with me, is the new currency. And so the first step to impact is securing what makes you unique. Because for you to be able to make money from something, it has to be something that has value. So when people see something that have value, one way or the other, they'll want to key to it, either by crook or any other means. And when you've already have something like that protected, it means there's no way for them to come to get this thing without your permission. But when you create room that this particular idea or this particular knowledge is not protected, then there's no way you can actually save yourself. So yeah, creativity is a new currency. And so the first step to impact is securing what makes you unique. So the question you want to ask yourself is, what makes me unique? As a creative, what exactly are you doing that makes you unique, that makes you different from creative A or make you different from creative B? You want to understand your uniqueness. And while understanding your uniqueness, you want to be able to say that, okay, this aspect or this thing that makes me unique, what kind of IP rights can I use to protect it? So we'll get to that junction. So the question, like I said, is, but why? Why do you want to secure what makes you unique? And the question I ask first is, what exactly makes you unique? You have to understand what makes you unique before you now say if you want to protect it or not. Because if you are not able to identify what makes you unique, then there will be a problem. Say, for example, what makes you unique is maybe your ability to be able to paint even while sleeping. Now, that kind of uniqueness is a creative uniqueness, and it falls under the confines of copyright. But when you are not able to identify what exactly makes you unique, you might probably go ahead and say, oh, you want a trademark or a patent for it. So understanding what makes you unique is important. So you need to understand what makes you unique. Now, when you understand what makes you unique, you need to also understand how do you secure this thing that makes you unique. And the answer, like I said here, is intellectual property. The answer is intellectual property. This is you holding that thing that makes you unique. But that question is, this thing is there, it makes me unique. How can I secure it such that people cannot reach it? Because we have internet. Internet is everywhere. And because of internet is everywhere, we tend to like put our creativity, our uniqueness, we put it out there so that anybody can touch it. But what is that barricade that you can put around it to make sure that nobody else can touch it, even despite the fact that it's available on social media? Nobody can touch it or use it without your permission. And this is where intellectual property comes in. Now, the next question is, what is intellectual property and why exactly does it matter? So from what we can see here, you can see, shall I say, the brain and creativity kind of joining hands together. And that should tell you that intellectual property has to do with your creativity and your capacity to be able to express that creativity, and which is that intellect. And IP basically is the creation of human mind. Because of the creation of human mind, we have two things that makes up intellectual property, which is the intellect and property. So intellectual property is the creation of human mind. Anything you create from your mind is intellectual property, be it music, be it drawings, be it diagrams, as long as this thing is expressed or is created from your own intellect and you are expressing it somewhere, that is intellectual property. And the next slide tells us exactly what I said earlier. Intellect property gives you intellectual property. That's the property of your intellect, simply put. The creation of the mind, which is the property of your intellect. And this IP is intangible in nature, such that you cannot see it, but it's there. It's intangible. You can't feel it, but it's definitely there. And people can see the value of your IP. So let's go back to the question on why does intellectual property matter? Why exactly does it matter? Why should you protect your intellectual property? Why don't you just leave it hanging and somebody else can just come around to just claim it? I'm sure most of us have seen the video that has been going around about Kumbi Skin claiming somebody trademarked her brand name before she actually did. And the mistake she actually made was launching that brand without actually securing the important things, though she claimed to have registered her brand with CAC and also gotten a domain name. However, she failed to claim ownership. She failed to get the ownership of that name, which is the trademark. And so by the time she wanted to file a trademark, she already realized that somebody else has done that. And according to the Nigerian law, the law gives upper hand to someone who actually filed first. So who filed first has an upper hand against the original person. And we've seen cases of the Zap Africa as well as Paystack. We've seen cases of MTN Web Plus. We've seen cases of the IMO, in my opinion, podcast, and so on and so forth. There's also a case on this particular guy. I think his name is Raymond, if I'm right. His podcast was removed from Spotify due to copyright infringement. They claimed he used some music in his podcast and they notified him severally, but he didn't respond to any of the notification. And so his podcast was removed from Spotify, meaning that he can't even trace, he doesn't have any trace of his hard work that he has been doing for more than 10 years thereabout. So why does it matter? From what I've said, as a creative, securing your IP means you have access to use it, and you also have that opportunity to give other people access to use it, and in return you get your return on investment. So I understand that it's very hard to come up with creativity is actually hard because you have to think. Sometimes you have what do you call it? Is it you can't think straight. There is this blockade. You need to get fresh air. You need to just be on a kind of a particular mood before that creativity start coming. And sometimes you spend money, sleepless nights, your time, your labor, and so on to invest in that creative work. And at the end of the day, you realize that upon putting this work probably on the internet or putting it out there, you realize that somebody else is already making money off your creativity without a permission, and there is nothing you can do about it simply because there was no protection measure in place. And this is very devastating. It's not a good thing because I can't imagine spending years to come up with something, and at the end of the day, I see someone just making money, vibing, and I'm just on the other side, can't make money from whatever it is I've done. And this also comes to play when in some instances as a creative, be a scriptwriter or a musician or a ghostwriter, you tend to write articles or music or movie scripts for producers. And at the end of the day, because nobody wants to be at loss, right? Everybody wants to make sure that IP rights is protected and they have ownership to it. So in your agreement, they probably tell you to sign off your rights so that they own ownership, and as such, you can't claim ownership at the end of the day. So as a creative that understand intellectual property, you probably want to decline that offer and probably tell them that because I wrote this work, I have protection in this work, and because of that, I would rather want to get a royalty based on so terms and agreements, so that as long as this movie keeps airing and keeps making money, a particular percentage of what this movie makes or what this music makes comes to me as the screenwriter or as the script writer or as the creative involved in the creative process of this work. So IP really matters because it gives you that benefit. You get your return on investment. It gives you exclusivity so that no one else can use your IP right without your permission. And that's why we are here today, so that going forward, you know the right you have as a creative and you are able to defend your right. Sometimes people understand that yes, there's a copyright is a thing or IP is a thing, but because you don't know your rights, they are going to do whatever they like. They'll give you a contract that they know that you are not supposed to sign because you have rights, but because of you don't understand how this thing works, then you are just going to sign it. And I think this is a good time to let you know that getting a lawyer to work with won't cost you as much as it will cost you when disputes arise. Because at the end of the day, when you realize that, oh, this person is actually trying to cheat me, and you've already signed a contract, before you get a lawyer to defend you, to do this, to do that, you must have spent millions of naira. So why don't you just invest that money in a lawyer? I know you will say, oh, lawyers are expensive, the money is much, but I can tell you for free that there's somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that is willing to work with you as a creative, hoping that as you grow, or depending on the contracts you guys sign, there's going to be something for them at the end of the day. So yeah, this is why IP matters and why we have to key into protection of our IP, right? So yeah, creation of the mind from what we have here. So this is a creative, yeah, a creative trying to express this idea on his board. And you can see that from his brain, he's thinking about music, he's thinking about movie, he's thinking about invention. And that is the creation of human mind. He's creating something from his mind. And this thing that he's creating deserves protection because it originates from his mind. And because of it originates from his mind, it is this person's intellectual property. So what impacts does IP have on creative? The impact IP have on creative is that as long as you know that you are going to benefit from what you are doing, it gives you that zeal to want to do more, because you know that this thing I'm doing won't get stolen by somebody else. Anybody that is using my work is going to reference my work, or is going to tag me or mention me, and they won't use my work in a way that is going to spoil my image. Don't use your work in a way that you don't like. They have to get permission from you before they can use your work. And if they are using your work, they definitely, you have something coming in for you as creative. So this alone is something that gives you that zeal to want to do more. And looking at the other side of it, IP doesn't only cares about the creative, is also care about the society. And this is why you see that majority of all IP right, they have a kind of protection period. IP right doesn't last forever. There's a particular number of years it lasts for, so that at the end of the day, when this IP expires and goes to the public domain, somebody else can pick up this work, they can use it and reuse it, and probably do something more creative, and also get protection for that IP right. Why that being said, there are also conditions whereby you can use a creative work without permission of the creative and without infringing on the creative right. Like I said, intellectual property doesn't just only look at the rights of the creative, it also look at how we can benefit the society. So let's say, for example, as maybe a lecturer in a school, I have students that I teach, and I want to use a particular maybe a novelist write-up to teach my students. So imagine if I need to get permission from each and every novelist before I'm able to use that material to teach my students. That's going to take a long time. And at the end of the day, you might not even, at the end of the day, when the person responds, it might not meet up with what exactly it is you want to do with it. So because of this, IP benefiting public right as well, there are exceptions and limitations. So some of the exceptions that come with copyright is fair use. Fair use meaning that you are using a work fairly. But the law also determines or explains what's fair. What do you mean by fair? What might be fair in Nigeria might not be fair in another country. So IP rights is territorial in nature, and as such, the law of each jurisdiction matters. And whatever you're looking at IP scenario, you have to look at what the law of that jurisdiction says. So in Nigeria, when it comes to fair use basically is when you use a copyrighted work when you use a copyrighted work in a just manner. It means you don't have to get permission of the copyright holder for you to use it. And you can only use this in some instances, such as education, news reporting, parody, review, and so on and so forth. But whenever you're using a copyrighted work and you have to commercialize it and make money from it, then you can't claim fair use any longer. But when it comes to this internet age, there's this question of does impression, followers, and likes, does it amount to commercialization? Because before a brand is going to endorse you and say, okay, we want you to promote this particular brand for us, it means you must have enough expressions, enough impressions rather. You must have enough likes, enough followers. But what if you actually used some people's material to get those likes and impressions and followers without their permission? And because of that work that you use, you are getting a deal from it. Does that like, followers, impression, does it translate to commercial exploitation? That's something we need to address when it comes to digital age. But let's look at types of intellectual property. So we have different types of intellectual property. So because this is a beginner class, I'm not going to go too deep. So I'm just going to highlight this for, and I might add one at the end of the day. But just to let you know that generally or broad, IP is categorized broadly. IP is broadly categorized into two categories. We have the industrial property and we have copyright. So when we talk about industrial property, we are going to talk about patents, trademark, trade secrets, geographical indication, traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expression, biogenetics, biogenetics, and so on and so forth. But like I said, for this class, we are just going to be looking at copyright, patent, trademark, trade secret, and maybe geographical indication. So copyrights, when I started, I said you have to understand what makes you unique. So if what makes you unique is maybe you like to solve problem, you have an inventive way, or you have this creative way that whenever there's a problem, you always have a solution to that problem. And that solution is always unique. It's not really, someone cannot just guess the solution. Then you might want to have a patent for that. But when you don't understand the unique, what makes you unique, you might not understand what IP rights or what IP protection will be used to protect that uniqueness. So copyright basically protects original work of authorship fixed in a medium. That is, it protects works such as literary works, artistic works, sound recording, musical work, audiovisual works, broadcasts. So if you have a unique idea or a unique creative idea and it doesn't fall under the realm of musical work, sound recording, literary work, artistic work, audiovisual work, and broadcast, what it means is that you can't claim copyright to that because copyright is only limited to these 6 categories of work I mentioned. Patent basically is limited to invention when you provide a new way of doing something or you are actually solving a particular problem. And for you to get patent, your invention or this your innovative idea has to be new, it has to be inventive, and it has to be industrially applicable. When it comes to trademark basically is an identifier. You can see that from all the images here, you see the bulb that has to do with trademark is different, like is unique. It's lightning, like, so trademark is that type of IP right that identifies and distinguish. So when you look at all of this, you see that this one for trademark stand out. And that's what is required when it comes to trademark. Your trademark or your brand name, your logo has to stand out. It has to identify you in the marketplace and distinguish you from your competitors. That's how you know about trademark. So anything that is a trademark has to be distinctive in the sense that it should not be descriptive, it should not be deceptive, it should not violate public morality, and it should not be generic. So given the fact that Omoni Oboli movie, Love in Every Word, it did a lot of numbers, you realize that so many people have incorporated Acholugo in their marketing and content strategy. So the question is that phrase, Achalugo, will you marry me? Is it distinctive enough for Omoni Oboli to claim a trademark on that name? Because we also saw this during the presidential election, LP, the LP scenario. Everybody was using LP, and at some point, somebody trademarked LP and the person wasn't even the guy who coined the LP. So trademark helps you to distinguish and identify a brand in the marketplace. Then trade secret basically is just an information or a list of information that gives you competitive edge. It's also confidential information that gives your business competitive edge over your competitors, such that whenever that trade secret is disclosed, it means you're going to have lower sales and it's going to affect your business in a way such that your customers might have to divert to the person that now has your trade secret, because there's no point going. Let's assume there's someone that sells a very nice bread in Lekki and I have someone in my vicinity that also sells bread, but the person in my vicinity bread doesn't taste as nice as the one in Lekki. I wouldn't mind driving down to Lekki to get that bread. But let's look at an instance whereby the person within my area already has or probably found a way to get the recipe the person in Lekki uses. It means the person in my street will be making the same bread the person in Lekki is making. And that means that I won't have to go to Lekki to buy bread. I'm just going to buy from the person in my street. And what does that do to the person in Lekki business? It's going to diminish the number of customers or clients they get when they are selling their bread. And it's also going to reduce their sales because somebody already have their trade secret. Also, let's look at industrial design. It's not here, but industrial design is also a type of IP right that basically protects aesthetics, like how it looks. If you say, oh, I like iPhone 16, I like iPhone 13. If you say why, you say, oh, it's sleek, it's nice, it's not heavy when I carry it. Or I like a car with big bum bum, or I like a car with small bum bum, or I like a car with small mirror. All of these things are just aesthetics. If you put the engine of the car with big bum bum in the car with small bum bum, there's 90% guarantee that it's going to work, right? So what we are buying basically is aesthetics. There was a time we used to buy these AC that you put on the wall. Then there was one that came, the split AC. Then there was one that was coming standing, looking like a fridge. So everybody was like, oh, I love this AC because of the aesthetics. But AC, the one on the wall or the one standing or the one outside, we still blow cold air, right? So AC is AC. What we are just buying is aesthetics, how it looks. Why do I want to buy a bag that has a ship design instead of buying the regular bag that has a square design? It's just aesthetics and class, basically. So for duration of copyright, so okay, let's look at the protection. What protection does copyright give you as a copyright holder? All types of IP rights gives you an exclusive right to exclude others from using, and you can also use it. However, patent is a negative right because this is a basic class. I won't really go into what negative right means, but copyright generally gives the copyright holder. Copyright is a bundle of rights, actually, and it has so many things in it. So copyright gives you an economic right and a moral right. So as a copyright holder, you have both economic rights and moral rights. An economic right basically is that right that you make money from. For example, your translation rights, adaptation rights, broadcast rights, reproduction rights, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to moral rights is that right that you can't make money from, but it gives you the right of attribution, right of paternity, the rights such that somebody else cannot use your work in a way that you don't like. If anybody is going to use your work, they have to attribute that work to you. They can't distort your work without your permission. Those are moral rights, but it doesn't give you, it's not a right that you make money from, but it gives you, it allows you to maintain your creativity and how you want it to be. And it lasts throughout the lifetime of the author and 70 years after the death of the author. This doesn't mean that all copyright in all jurisdictions last for that period. Like I said, IP right is territorial in nature. And as such, the law of every jurisdiction will determine the period of protection. So in Nigeria, it used to be throughout the lifetime of the author and 50 years after the death of the author, but later it was changed to 70. And this is the reason why someone like Michael Jackson, even in his death, is still making money from his estate. You can't use Michael Jackson's song without permission from his family members who are in charge of his estate. Then when it comes to patents, basically patents lasts for 20 years. And after the 20 years, it goes to the public domain. All IP rights, once they are expired or once their protection period is over, they all go to the public domain. When it comes to patent, it's for 20 years. And after 20 years, it goes to the public domain. And this is the reason why when we first, or let's say when I was growing up, I grew to know Big Biro. I don't know if majority of us know Big Biro. Big Biro is a ballpoint pen, the pen we used to write. But in this case, the name of this pen is Big Biro. So while I was growing up, the pen we used to know then was Big Biro. And later on, there was Eleganza. Then before we knew it, we didn't see Eleganza again. Probably because Big had to challenge Eleganza for using their invention without their permission because their patent was still running. But immediately Big's patent expired after 20 years, they started seeing different kind of writing material like Lucky Cora, Cora Lucky, and so on and so forth. And you'll see that after just some time after the patent for the ballpoint pen expired, Big came up with this kind of pen that you can always change the color. I don't know if any one of us used it. It has blue, red, green, yellow, black. So instead of you buying like 5 different type of pen, all you need to do is just buy one pen, and all you need to do is just change it, like press it down, the blue comes up, press it, it changes color. And there was also this kind of pen that used to have bulb that on light. So when you are writing, the moment you put the pen on paper, the bulb starts shining. So these are kind of inventions. Then we have trademark. Like I said, trademark is a brand identifier. It identifies a brand in the marketplace and also distinguishes from that of the competitors. So let's say, for example, we have 2 different table water and they don't have label or a brand on it. How do we distinguish Pocari from Eva? So for Pocari, we are likely going to distinguish Pocari because the bottle has a distinctive design, of which the design of that bottle can be protected by industrial design. Remember I said industrial design basically protect aesthetics. So because of how the bottle looks like, we can say Pocari has a distinctive bottle, and as such, even without the brand name or the label, we are likely going to distinguish Pocari from Eva. But let's look at Eva and maybe Swan. I think they have the same bottle, right? They don't have, none of them own industrial design, right? So those bottles are similar. So without the brand name, how do we distinguish between Eva and Swan? So this is what trademark does. And trademark will last initially for 7 years and 14 years consecutively. If anyone has read the ZAP issue, you see that at a point, was it ZAP? No, sorry, MTN rather. The MTN Web Plus case study, there was a point MTN was trying to defend themselves, saying that they registered the MTN Web Plus trademark at the time that CityLink didn't renew their rights. So at that time, because they didn't renew their rights, the right was opened up for usage by somebody else. So this also says that as a brand owner, it's important for you to use your mark and also renew it. There's a case of Apple losing rights to a particular trademark. I think it's Swash, or I can't remember the name now, but Apple lost the right to a trademark due to non-use. So trademark will last initially for 7 years, then 14 years consecutively. If you continue to use it and you keep maintaining it, you can use it forever, just like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has been using that brand name for more than 100 years and they are still in the market. For trade secrets and copyrights are types of right that they don't, let me say, they are unregistered rights. Although copyright exists automatically the moment you create a work that is original and you fix it in a medium. In a medium could be a book, could be a flash drive, could be on internet. So the moment you do that, you have automatic copyright protection. However, we always advise that it would be good for you to go a step further to actually deposit your work with NCC. I won't call it register because copyright, according to the law that governs copyright, it says that copyright doesn't have any formality for registration. So what you do is you can deposit your work with the Nigerian Copyright Commission, so that they give you certificate to show that, to prove ownership, basically, in case of infringement. While trade secret, on the other hand, doesn't require registration at all. There's no registration process for trade secrets. All you need to do is you either keep quiet, or you use an NDA, or you use a non-compete clause to protect yourself in the marketplace. So because we have creatives here, we have so many people who will be pitching their ideas to investors or partners or collaborators, and as such, they need to submit probably the pitch deck so that their investors will be impressed and want to invest in whatever they're doing. At this point, it is important for you to find a way to protect yourself. You could use the copyright symbol, because a pitch deck is a literary work. It's something that you've written. And if you remember, I said that copyright protects literary and artistic work as long as it is original and it is fixed. So the moment you come up with a pitch deck that is original to you, and you've written that pitch deck on paper, it means you have automatic copyright protection. So before you submit your pitch deck, you can have like a copyright symbol, something like copyright, you have C, maybe C in circle 2025 by so. So whoever it is that you're submitting your pitch deck to can also see it, and they have it like this, they have it in their consciousness that, oh, I can't use this work because there's a copyright symbol. This doesn't mean that it's going to stop them from using it. It's just going to give them that consciousness that, this person is likely to sue me if I use this work, compared to when you don't even have any copyright notice. Another thing you have to do is make sure that you are able to keep track of the conversations you are having. So you can do email. Sometimes when you do things like that, you mail yourself the material so that you can keep track of the dates and all this, because when you are facing disputes, these are some of the things that the court is going to ask from you. So yes, we're talking about trade secrets. So you can also use a non-disclosure agreement. But the truth is, most investors don't like to sign non-disclosure agreement, because the thing is, they don't even know if your pitch is going to make any sense. So imagine you already asking them to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and they came across another pitch that looks similar to yours. There's no way you are going to know. So most of them don't like to sign NDA. So the best thing you can do will be the copyright measures I mentioned earlier. So lastly, we are going to look at steps to protect creative work, and something that I call the IP life cycle. So basically, we've talked about you creating your work, or you have an idea. Okay, I'm going to mention that copyright or idea in itself is not protected by intellectual property, because idea is just there, is roaming freely. In fact, most of us might have the same idea. It's just that the person that expresses it first have the upper hand, because you are the one that expressed it. So if at the end of this lecture, someone asks all of us and say, okay, what can you say about this lecture? All of us have the idea of what this lecture is about. However, in expressing our thoughts, we are not going to write the same thing. So it is the expression of the idea that is protected. Say, for example, there is Big Brother Naija, there's Big Brother Africa, there's America Got Talent, there's Motina Dance, or there are so many programs, and the idea behind everything, they are almost similar. The only difference is the expression of the idea. How does Big Brother express their own idea? When it comes to Big Brother, they put people in the house. There is a Big Brother that asks them questions, tell them what to do, and they get, so all of them have a particular way they do their things. So it is the way they are doing it, that expression of the idea, that is protected, and not the idea itself. So what's the IP life cycle? The first thing you have to do is you have to create it. Once you have that idea in your head, then bring the idea to life. That's creation. The moment you've created that idea, the next thing you have to do is to protect it. But before protecting, you want to determine, is this a registrable right, or is it an unregistrable right? For example, if what you have created is a recipe that you know that, oh, this recipe is unique to me, there is no way you are going to register it. So the only way you can protect that recipe is either by using an NDA or using a non-compete clause, because recipe falls under trade secret. And I mentioned that trade secret is not a type of IP right that you register. So you need to understand if what you have created is something that requires registration or doesn't require registration. If it requires registration, then you have to go ahead to register. If it doesn't require registration, you have to find other means to protect it. Now that you've protected your IP, does that mean nobody is going to use it? It doesn't mean nobody is going to use it. In fact, once you've protected it and you are making money from it, people are saying that this thing is working for you, they will always want to infringe it. They will find a way to come and just use it without your permission. And this is where policing comes in. You have to police your IP. Right, because once you don't police it, there might be thousands of people. Internet is very broad. You can't even chase everybody on internet. This is just that the day God will catch them, an algorithm will bring their posts to you, and that's where you start following up on them. So you have to police your IP rights as your IP as a creative. So policing it means you are looking at who is infringing on my rights, who is doing it without my permission. Then if at the end of the day, you eventually caught somebody, then the next thing you have to do is you have to enforce your rights. So enforcing your rights does not necessarily mean you taking the person to court. It could be something as simple as getting your lawyer to draft a cease and desist letter so that the person can stop infringing on your IP rights. So we can see that for the ZAP issue, both ZAP Africa and Paystack ZAP, they've issued themselves cease and desist letter. So we are only waiting for who exactly will desist and cease. So by enforcement, you can actually first of all send a cease and desist letter, or you can negotiate and decide to license. Because I like to say that when you realize that someone is infringing on your mark, most times infringement is not as a result of people just wanting to infringe. It's as a result of lack of information or lack of knowledge about intellectual property, because most people believe that because it is available online means it is free for use. So sometimes people don't really understand. So you can try to find a way to negotiate and license the IP rights to that person, so the person can use the IP rights, and in turn you get payment. And that's where monetization comes in, because the end result for protecting your IP is to make money. That's the end result. So anything you are doing, make sure it's something that at the end of the day brings money to you. If you are doing cease and desist letter, if you are settling out of court, if you are doing arbitration or mediation, or eventually you're going to go through the litigation route, make sure that you are monetizing your IP. Because if you don't monetize your IP, what it means is that your IP is going to become a liability instead of an asset. Because like I said, you have to renew your IP rights, and renew your IP right means that you have to keep paying a certain amount of money to keep it running. And also your registration for your IP is not free. You paid money. So if your IP is not making money for you, it means you just put your IP in one place and you just keep putting in money to renew it, and you are not getting anything from it, and that becomes a liability. So I'm going to wrap up my lecture at this point, and we're going to